This is just a piece of Star Wars art I did. It was actually a poster for a private screening of Force Awakens that was actually done in the Prescott area. They did a very, very limited run of these just for the people who were at the special screening. So one of the things I was trying to do with this, which I thought was very important, was to kind of show the passing of the torch, the idea of the original trilogy and then these new trilogy characters. Um, I had my own hopes and dreams for what was going to happen.
I remember
And
talking to you about this when you first showed me this image.
yeah,
And how cool I thought this image was, and how you incorporated Kylo Ren's lightsaber,
hmm
which I actually really dig Kylo Ren's lightsaber. I have one. I have a toy version of it, and yeah, I just remember that this kind of brings me back, to the whole anticipation with the Force Awakens, because I was very optimistic, and I was, I'll say it, I was too optimistic.
yeah,
I had these huge expectations, and it's funny because people compare it to like Episode One, and I remember coming out of Episode One reenacting the fight with Darth Maul with my friend,
yeah,
and I was like 22 years old or something like that, 22, 23. I was in my 20s, early 20s, and my friend and we started like reenacting the fight, and we got toy lightsabers and we started reenacting the fight,
right,
and because I thought that was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. That fight is so good, the
right.
one that Episode One ends on, that lightsaber duel. And man, oh, the contrast. I went with a big group. I went with a big group to see the Force Awakens, and the main friend who organized it, he was dressed up as Anakin from Revenge of the Sith,
hmm
and his wife, who's very pretty, was dressed as Leia. And it was like this big fun group. We all went together. We had reserved seats, and I had some friends from work that were there. I mean, it was like a big deal. And I remember we all just came out of that movie theater like, what the hell was that? You know what I mean? Like, we were just like, these were hardcore Star Wars fans. Um, but this really takes me back to kind of before that, before actually seeing the film, and the
right.
anticipation I had. And this is such an awesome image. You did such a great job with this.
Oh,
Um,
thanks. I
I
decided
mean,
it'd be fun to show and continue having kind of original art, for the show. So, um,
well, I love this image, and like I said, I love the way you incorporate Kylo Ren's lightsaber that way. It's really well done, and yeah, this just takes me back to when I was so optimistic about the Disney taking over Star Wars, and I was so optimistic about this new trilogy, about seeing all these guys back together.
right.
Never happened. Never
Yeah,
happened. So
I imagined. I know when I was creating this poster, I imagined that Luke, Han, and Leia were going to be those elder statesman characters, from the original trilogy films. So instead of Mon Mothma, who we have, not much connection to, it's Leia. You know, instead of General Nadine, it's Han Solo. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I thought that, and I honestly thought that was the role they were going to play. You know, I thought Luke was training, the next generation of Jedi, and Luke was the one character I figured probably wouldn't make it through the three films just because of the nature of him being a Jedi Master and helping to try and bring the Jedi back. In my mind, I imagine he would be targeted essentially for assassination. You know, by the whatever the remnants of the Sith were that existed. Um, and again, I went into Force Awakens with no spoilers, but in my mind, that's what I was imagining is that our original trilogy characters were going to be around for all three films. We are going to see them interact with each other because they were going to be the leaders, the older, experienced warriors that we saw in the original series of films that we didn't have a connection to. But these characters we do have a connection to. So
yeah,
when one of them steps up and says something, we understand the gravitas and the importance of what they're saying. And if they say the situation is dire, we know that they've seen enough action. We've been along with them that they truly know the situation is dire. So that's what I originally envisioned when I put this together. That's kind of what I was thinking was going to happen. But no, yeah, it's all unfolded much differently than we all expected. So I was going to read the just here real quick for Rise of Skywalker. I was going to read the plot synopsis here. Of course, The Rise of Skywalker is directed by J.J. Abrams. The screenplay is by J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio. And the synopsis reads as: the surviving resistance faces the First Order once more as Rey, Finn, and Poe Dameron journey continues. With the power and knowledge of a generation behind them, the final battle commences. Okay. So we should definitely, we're going to be talking spoilers here as we get further into it. However, here at the beginning, we definitely want to talk about our general impressions of Rise of Skywalker, and want to stay away from too many spoilers. So tell me, Eric, what was your general impression of it after having seen Rise of Skywalker?
My general impression. Well, I wasn't happy. I mean, that's all I can say. I will say this: this is probably something that really kind of concerns me, and I've heard other fans talk about this. I want to be really angry about this film. I want to be really incensed and angry about it, but I can't muster it. I've gotten to the point where I don't really care, and that's probably the most disappointing thing for me about this entire. You can't really judge this movie without putting it with the other two films. It's a trilogy, and this is the end of the trilogy. It's the last movie. It's the end. It's the end of the story.
Right.
And it was just so unsatisfying to me. And like I said, the thing that really disappoints me is I can't even get like at least The Last Jedi. I was angry. I was upset. I was really angry. So at least there's passion there. I didn't feel any of that with this film. I did go with my kids, and they enjoyed it. They all liked it. Okay.
Okay.
They like Rey. They like BB-8. I didn't realize one of my kids is a Reylo person, which I guess I need to work on my parenting skills. I didn't know that. I didn't know one of my daughters was a Reylo person. I had no idea. That kind of shocked me. But yeah, it's just, I love Star Wars, and I'm very passionate about Star Wars, but I didn't feel any passion in this movie. And I think one of the big problems with this movie is that it's just not well put together as a film. It's kind of like this mishmash of all these different things, and you can tell JJ was trying to appease everybody. I think he was even trying to address the fandom menace. Right. I think he was trying to please them. Trying to fix the mess that The Last Jedi is. And you have to talk about this in context, because I think, even from my perspective of someone that didn't like The Force Awakens, okay, told you how I felt when I came out of it. I do understand that there were certain things that were set up in that movie, okay, and Rian Johnson came in and destroyed all those things. Killing Snoke. I mean, that's a huge thing. He basically destroyed the story in the middle. And we wound up in a situation where it's okay, where is this going? All right. The resistance, okay? The resistance. It just makes me laugh. It's the rebellion. Is in a dire situation. They all fit on the Millennium Falcon at the end of The Last Jedi. Okay. And almost immediately, even though they're clearly in a sort of weakened state, they're clearly on the run. But immediately when we see the resistance, they've got ships again. They've got troops now. I mean, they've got all these things. It's come on, you're not going to explain any of this, are you? And it's kind of the whole movie was like that. It was like this. To me, it was just a very disjointed mess. It's I didn't think that technically, visually, there were issues with The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. I thought The Force Awakens was kind of boring because it didn't really have any new designs, and it was very kind of an understated film in terms of like special effects and stuff like that. They kept it very basic, and there wasn't a whole lot of new stuff. Rise or the Last Jedi had a little bit more because you had a little bit of a rebel fleet. It showed some more of the First Order, that kind of stuff. So there was a little bit more. They had the bombers, they had some new designs. So visually, in terms of like special effects, the way that the films were put together, I don't have a lot of criticism of either of those films, other than, like I said, with The Force Awakens, I felt that there was nothing new in it. There literally was nothing new. The X-wings look like old X-wings, Right. They just changed them a little bit. The TIE fighters look like TIE fighters, just changed them a little bit. This film, though, I felt was technically a mess. Like, I felt it was like a badly put together film. Like, I actually will go after the quality of the film. The score, I'm sad to say, did not grab me. There was no big Imperial March moment, like the first time you hear the Imperial March, or the big
the walkers.
No, I was talking about the score. I mean, there was no big moment as far as like a piece that really hit me and was iconic to me, like
right. That's why I mentioned the walkers, because the walkers is a very specific musical cue when they kind of show up on screen in Empire. So yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah. Okay, now I see where you're going. And I keep forgetting the piece, the big piece in Episode 1. What is it?
Duel of the Fates.
Duel of the Fates. God, I love Duel of the Fates. It's frustrating me. I couldn't remember the name of it, because I love that piece. That piece sticks out to me so much. It's so good the way they use it. So epic. I didn't feel any of that. So, I have to say, I guess the main takeaway is that I was very underwhelmed. So what's your take, Dave? What's your take?
So here's my overall impression of Rise of Skywalker. And my opinion is a little different than yours, and it's a little different from my wife's. My wife's opinion, after watching the film, I said, "What did you think?" She said, "Meh." That was her entire review.
There you go.
Now here's my review, my overall impression of the film. I didn't hate it. There were some sequences I kind of liked. I thought there was some very interesting ideas that could have made for a compelling trilogy of films if that's what they'd actually done. I think that it is a visual spectacle. I think if you're a Star Wars fan and if you've been along for the ride up until now, if you're curious to go see the movie, obviously go see the movie. Like I said, there was things I liked about it and things I didn't like about it. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it like the way that I really do not like Last Jedi. But it's not a home run. And here's the two things I dislike most about this film. I hate that in the marketing they tried to sell this as basically the end of these 9 films, because this is just the end of a failed experiment for these 3 trilogy films in my mind.
Absolutely.
And I hate that they tried to sell it this way, because I don't feel it really reflects very well on, ironically enough, Lucas's trilogy. I feel like Lucas's trilogy is a stronger series of films in a lot of ways. Jar Jar and the potty humor and whatever aside, I mean, I just feel like those films, they do more to expand and build the universe. And I feel like there's a lot more interesting material there. And I feel like that these films, while, like I said, this last one, there's some things I like, just like there's things I like about Force Awakens. I do feel like that it just really bothers me they sold this as the end of these 9 films, because I don't feel like it is. And here's basically my takeaway for all 3 films. It feels like that if you've ever done this before, sometimes as a creative exercise, what they'll do is they have one person start a story and they pass it to the next person to continue it on. and then they pass it to a third person to continue it on, and a fourth person, and then eventually it comes back to the person who started it, and then that person has to end it. That's what this film felt like to me.
That is a great analogy. That is a great analogy, Dave. That is an awesome analogy in my opinion. I mean,
right. And so, and that's basically what you get. So, if you watch the last two films, that's why I said if you watch the last two films, you're curious to see how they try and wrap this all up. It's an interesting film to watch. There's going to be some things you like, and there's going to be some things you hate. The film had in it the two things I most wanted to see. So in that context, I overall, I'm going to say, I was very happy to get to see those things on screen, even if it was very brief. And we'll get more into that into the
and I want to guess what those things are when we get into spoilers, because I think I know what they are, and I want to guess what those two things were that you liked.
So here is the way I would because here's the thing. It's hard for me to recommend this film unless you're curious about it. If you're curious about it, go see it. If you're not curious about it, if you didn't really like Last Jedi and you're not sure about it, if you're already subscribed to Disney Plus, just wait. But if you're a Star Wars fans and you like the other two films, or if you like the sci-fi spectacle nature of it, I think there's some fun things to be seen on the big screen with this film. And I think it'll give it a little bit more scope and a little bit more punch. So it does warrant going and seeing the film if you are interested in it. But if you're not interested in it, if you just wait, it'll be on Disney Plus in a little bit. You'll be able to rent it, and you can watch it, in that way if that's, how you want to see it. It's just hard for me to wholeheartedly, all out to the wall recommend the film. I do have some friends I recommend to go see the movie because I do think they'll enjoy a lot of aspects of it. But as a general review, I'm just going to say if you're thinking you can wait, just wait. After having just seen it, I was probably more on the side of go see it for the visual spectacle of it. But the more I've thought about the film, my opinions are kind of like, if you're thinking wait, just wait.
I have to say this. I mean, I'm very disappointed in the visual spectacle of it because I thought it was just too much. This idea of like a screen full of capital ships. I mean, it looked ridiculous to me. Really, it just looked ridiculous to me. It was too much. I wanted to find it for the show, but I didn't get it. But do you remember that there was somebody that took the original trailer for the Force Awakens and he made the special edition version, making fun of George Lucas? And the main thing about that was more. Like he kept showing like more TIE fighters, more aliens, more, right? Because that's kind of what the special editions did. It was just like the people, there's like that classic scene where like there's actually like this big alien thing walking by when they're on Tatooine, and actually like you can't see what's going on. And it's like, why did you do that? You know what I mean? And I actually, of the special editions, my favorite is actually the original one of the Star Wars, because I like the Jabba the Hutt scene, and I like that we get more scenes with Biggs. But that scene in particular, that one people hate because this big alien monster thing walks right in the frame and you can't see what's going on. It's like, why did you do that? But anyway, this person did this fan trailer. I recommend it. I wanted to kind of show it for the show to punctuate what I'm talking about. But the main idea of this trailer that he made was that, George Lucas just put too much stuff. It was too much stuff going on. No, George Lucas didn't. This guy did. Okay. That is this film to a T. I mean, it's ridiculous how many ships they show on screen sometimes. It just becomes like, 1 gajillion ships, It's like an insane like number that you made up, Doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good. Having the screen filled with all these ships that are supposed to be kind of like, important and kind of specialized and everything like that, it doesn't impress me just because you put more of them on the screen. Just because you fill the screen with Star Destroyers, it doesn't impress me. We've all seen that in the trailer. The scene of all these Star Destroyers. I didn't like it when I saw it in the trailer. I thought it was going to be too much. And when I saw it on the big screen, I really hated it. It was too much. And so, yeah, I would say I agree with you in the sense that, yeah, I would not recommend that you go to the theater and see this and waste your money on it if you have Disney Plus. I would just wait. Get Disney Plus, just wait and watch it there. Just because of that aspect, like I almost got a headache sometimes watching this film. That's kind of the problem that I had. It was just like you could totally tell what JJ was trying to do, and he had this philosophy, obviously, that more is better. Hey, you like one destroyer, you'll love like 10,000 of them, right? And I'm like, no, I don't, because it's ridiculous. So I had a problem with that. So me personally, I don't even think that I would recommend it as far as like the spectacle on the big screen, because I usually do that. Like we talked about Joker in our Joker review. I definitely advocate for you to go watch that on the big screen because every scene in the Joker to me was like a painting. It was just beautiful. It was so well crafted. And that's, that's like an 80s retro. I mean, we're talking about scenes where a guy is in his apartment building and they're more interesting than this stuff to me. To me, it kind of just overwhelmed me. And I think a lot of people have that same reaction to it.
Right. Okay, so that's going to be our overall impressions. So let's go ahead and get into some spoiler talk now. So we're going to get into spoilers for the film, and we're going to go probably pretty knee deep into spoilers here. So if you're watching at home, listening at home, whatever, if you haven't seen Rise of Skywalker and you want to avoid spoilers, now would be the time to obviously pause it. I'm not going to say go watch the film and come back because that'd be kind of difficult since it's in theaters. But obviously at this point, you're probably going to want to stop listening or watching, see the film and maybe come back and review this episode at a later date to see if your opinions match up with ours. So let me go first, Eric, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to talk about the single idea that I love most from this film. And then
I can't guess what it is.
And then I'm going to explain why I like it. And then I'm going to explain why I feel like it was horribly misused. Okay. My favorite idea that comes out of this film is the idea of these Sith zealots. This growing group that worships the idea of the Sith as ultimate power, almost kind of like Satanists, right? That follow this dark Lord and believe that through him, worshiping him, supporting him, doing his bidding is going to give them power and influence. And what I love the idea of these Sith zealots that in the film are the reason that Palpatine is still alive. Okay. It's almost like Palpatine's been kept alive because these Sith zealots refuse to give up the fact that their time has ended. And I kind of like that idea. And I really think that that's genius. But here's why I think it was misused in this film. It should have been established in Force Awakens. We should have started with this idea in Force Awakens and carried it forward. Like, for example, there's this new Imperial commander that's introduced in this film. He's kind of he's almost like a throwback character to the kind of Imperial commanders that we had in the original trilogy of films. Why wasn't this guy in Force Awakens? Because this guy seems very much to be a Sith zealot. And the idea of these Sith zealots, I mean, these could have been former Imperial commanders. These could have been former, governors of these different, worlds within the Empire. I mean, there's something really awesome about this idea. I like the idea of the stadium full of the Sith zealots. You know what I mean? Waiting to see the culmination of what they wanted to see happen, and Palpatine come back to the throne, either through Rey or through his own power, and basically bend the universe, and put them on their knees because all of them are going to benefit from that. Like, I love that idea. I think that idea is powerful and interesting, but I hate the way they did it because they should have started introducing this idea back with Force Awakens. These ideas of these Sith relics. Why didn't we start that with Force Awakens? And the reason we didn't is because this, again, is like that thing you do in school where one person starts the story and they hand it to the other person, and then it gets back to the guy who had the original idea, and he hates what the other people added to it, and he tries to somehow bring it back to his original idea and end it the way he originally wanted to end it, even though that's not what the story is anymore. That's what I hate. I think this Sith Zealot idea is really interesting, but I just feel like that it's unfortunate that they tried to shoehorn it in the last film.
Well, I want to talk about that character. First of all, I thought his name was weird. General Pride is that character you're talking about, General Pride. Which right. I was like, that's really cheesy name. Okay, I'm just going to say that straight off the bat. But anyway, I was fascinated by that character to an extent of exactly the lines you're talking about. Here's the issue, okay? Like you said, that sort of exercise that people do, which is a great writing exercise. I'm not going to knock that exercise. That's a great way to learn how to write and to do all that kind of stuff. It's a terrible way to do films, and you see the result. I don't think this idea of the Imperial Zealots was ever there, ever. I think it's something they came up with after the fact when they decided they were going to put Palpatine, that they were going to basically jam Palpatine into this saga, Because I don't think there was any intention to bring Palpatine back when they started with The Force Awakens. And I don't think there was any intention to bring him back with The Last Jedi. There is not one single indication on the previous two films that they ever intended to bring Palpatine back.
Right.
Not one. And that's what you were asking the question. Well, why didn't we see General Pride before? Because General Pride didn't exist before. This is something that JJ, and his people came up with after the fact when they realized whatever it was that they actually wanted to do was destroyed by Rian Johnson because he killed Snoke. That's my theory. Okay? When Rian Johnson killed Snoke, he destroyed whatever idea JJ Abrams originally had. That's what I think happened. And that's why I think we don't see this. We don't see General Pride. We don't see this Imperial Zealot, which, by the way, I think that there's a bit of a Mandalorian connection here. I think that the Moff kind of is supposed to represent those Imperial Zealots, right? That's what I'm kind of thinking.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I think this idea that they introduced in this film, I love this idea. And I hate that this wasn't the undercurrent behind these three films, because I think that the idea of these Sith artifacts that have a history, that when Rey touches them, that through the Force she experiences something that's happened, some horrible ritual, something they were used in. This idea, I really think in this film they touched upon what these three films could have been about. It's just a shame that they didn't just treat this like a writer's room and actually break the story, at least if they're going to pass it around to people, because I feel like that idea, I think, is really interesting. And I think the film still could have ended with, Palpatine kind of in a similar state where he's on this arm and he's, still kind of there because they still want to somehow take his power and channel it into someone else so that they can still, through this being, rule the universe. Like these ideas, a lot of the stuff with Palpatine I thought was interesting. It's unfortunate it's in this film, and it's unfortunate that it was used in this way, because I think these ideas could have made for a very interesting undercurrent and leading us to a villain, whether Snoke turned out to actually be a deformed clone of Palpatine. You know what I mean? Or
right. Which is kind of implied is somewhat implied in the film, but they don't tell us that. So
yeah, and I think that was probably JJ's original idea. I think that's what he was intending to do with Snoke. I think Snoke is supposed to be a deformed version of Palpatine. Now,
that's a great idea, but I'm not sure that that's what they were doing. I think again the problem is Dave, that again I think when they killed Snoke, in The Last Jedi, whatever the story was that JJ had was destroyed.
And I
And
agree with
all this stuff was made up after the fact as a response to what Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi. He screwed it up so bad. They had to come up with a completely new narrative, and it doesn't fit with the rest of the movies.
right. Well, I totally agree with that. Um, and then I'm going to throw out my two favorite things that I liked. Okay, I like the idea that Rey is related to Palpatine. I just kind of like that idea. I like it. I thought that I'm glad that Chewbacca didn't die in the scene where her Force lightning emerges. But if that had been a different sideline character and the character had really died, and we had seen that she was basically on that tipping point, you know what I mean, because of her anger of being, because she's by genetics and birth, she's so in tuned with the dark side of the Force that it just comes out of her. I like that idea. I mean, I really do. And that's another one of these things I think is interesting.
Do you think that idea fits with the previous two films and the way she was characterized in the previous two films?
No, it does not. But I'm saying that would have been an interesting thing to explore in these three films if they'd handled it differently. See, that's what I'm talking about. It's like I think that these ideas they hit in this last film, I think, are interesting enough that the films could have been different enough from the other Star Wars films. We could have explored the Force in a completely different way. They could have still done some similar things that they did in these films. But no, I don't think that we led there. I think this is definitely whoever, I know Chris Terrio is credited as writing it, maybe it was Chris Terrio, whoever it was. I think these are really interesting ideas. And I know a lot of people are pointing to the Rey as related to Palpatine idea as just pure fan service. Whatever. I still think it's an interesting idea. It's all about how you explore the concept, how you evolve it, and how you basically get to the resolution of the story.
Exactly. It's all about how you get there. Now, personally, I don't like Rey being a Palpatine. I think it's ridiculous. Palpatine was never shown to even have a girlfriend or a love interest or anything like that. You always kind of assume that he was a very solitary individual because he's incredibly evil, and that's not his thing. He's not out there seducing women and stuff like that because that's not his priority. His priority is power. That's all he cares about. And also, there was that implication that he had some knowledge from Darth Plagueis on how to create life. In other words, he didn't need to reproduce the way that normal humans do. He didn't need to have a son. He didn't need to have daughters. He didn't need to do any of that because he had that information with Darth Plagueis of how to create life. There was that implication that he created Anakin. There was definitely implication that that's what happened. Although my understanding is they've said that's not the case, but I think that was clearly implied in the Lucas version. Okay, but the thing is, her being a Palpatine, there's two issues. First of all, one is either you like the idea of a new character being a Palpatine, or you don't. Okay, that's a personal preference. You like that idea, I don't. That's just a personal preference. But the other side of this is, in terms of the character of what we saw on screen in the first two movies, there was no hint of her having any dark side in her at all. She was just pure as snow. There was no development. I could never understand the fans that wanted her to switch to the dark side, because I was like, we haven't seen anything like that in these previous two films. She was always good. Everything she did was good. Everything she did was perfect. That's why you get the Mary Sue allegations. She's perfect. How could she possibly have any desire to be on, for the dark side? I think that was all added when they decided to bring Palpatine in and make her a Palpatine. And to me, I just was not convinced of it at all. To me, it was just like, where was this in the other two films? Where did she ever show any propensity to be evil or like this in the other two films?
Well, there is that one scene in Last Jedi where when Luke is giving her first lesson, she immediately goes to the dark side, and Luke has a hard time pulling her out of it. But um, I'm just saying, I think the idea is interesting. You know what I mean? The way that they explored it, I think, is unfortunate. You know, but I do think the idea of this concept handled in a slightly different manner, I think could have been really interesting. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like I think there's some really interesting ideas here in this film that if they'd been explored differently across these trilogy of films, it could have been a really powerful and interesting conclusion in this film, and we could be having a completely different conversation. It could have been the exploration of the dark side, and in a sense that I think a lot of people had originally hoped, with the original prequels. Um, but like I said, unfortunately, the way that they went about it is just unfortunate. But I do like the concept and the idea of Rey being related to Palpatine. Um, and I think that scene where her and Kylo were kind of using the Force against each other, fighting over that shuttle, and then the Force lightning emerging in a different context, that scene could have been really cool and really interesting.
I hated that scene. So I hated it. I was like, where is this coming from? And now she's using Force lightning. Who taught her how to use Force lightning? Luke didn't know how to use Force lightning. Leia didn't know how to use Force lightning. Well, I think everybody has Force lightning now, but I mean, that's a problem. There's nothing is built upon anything else in this movie. It just all kind of comes out of nowhere.
Well, all I was going to say is that I think the Force lightning is a Sith ability, one. And then number two, I just think that it's her anger. It's because
who taught her how to do that? What Sith taught her how to do Force lightning?
I think it's just an outgrowth of her anger. She got so angry. And
I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. To quote Han Solo from The Force Awakens, that's not how the Force works, sir. That is not how the Force works. That's one of the reasons I have so many problems with this from a lore perspective. I mean, they've done terrible things with the Force in these three Disney movies. Terrible. Doesn't make any sense anymore.
All I'm saying is, explored differently, I like the idea.
No, I get that. Like I said, one part of it is like there's a personal preference factor, and I get that. I can see that. I totally can see that. If you like the idea of her being a Palpatine, well, you like the idea of her being a Palpatine. My main argument is that there was no indication of that in the previous two films, and I guarantee you that was not the intention when they were doing the previous two films. That was not the intention. In fact, Rian Johnson obviously said very plainly, she's a nobody, which, you know what? I thought that was good. And the reason I thought that was good was because she says that in The Force Awakens. When they ask her who she is, she says, I'm no one. That to me is good writing, because that's basically her telling you that's who I am. I'm nobody. I'm not anybody's daughter. I'm just someone that's attuned with the Force, like thousands of other people in this world, because we know that's the way the Force works. The Jedi were going out trying to find people that were attuned to the Force. That's how the Force works. That's consistent. She just happens to be really good at it. She's not a Skywalker. She's not an Obi-Wan. She's not a Palpatine. She's no one. That to me is good writing, because she said the line in The Force Awakens, and that was always my argument to people. Hey, she told us who she was. She's no one. That's good writing. But because this thing got so messed up by the previous film, and because any ideas that JJ and his people had in the first film were destroyed in the second film, there's no, they just had to kind of totally redo the story. It doesn't fit with the other two films. It doesn't fit.
So here's my last thing that I really liked in this film. It's very brief, but I love that scene of Luke and Leia training.
That was the one I was going to guess.
Yeah,
because I wanted to guess what you like, and that's what I would have guessed. I was going to guess that's what you were like, because you've talked about that. I think every time we've talked about this movie, you've talked about it.
Right, and I love that scene. I think it's really cool. In all honesty, that's more of what I would have liked to have seen out of these films, is just the emergence of the Jedi again. and instead of still seeing the Jedi in the same state that they've been in since forever, I would have liked to have seen, Luke and Leia training and a new generation of Jedi emerging, and just a completely different thing. But I do like this idea of the Sith zealot, and being behind everything, and as a group, because they're so hungry for power, pulling the strings and orchestrating everything that leads to kind of a similar ending like we had in this film, but a completely different two other films that lead up to this point. Because I think there's some very interesting ideas in the film, but those are the things I like. I'm going to talk just briefly about the thing that I dislike the most. I don't like this weird Force connection thing where they're like grabbing and pulling stuff. Like, I'm on a different planet than you. I'm going to yank this necklace off of your neck.
That was terrible.
That
was terrible. That was like a cartoon.
And then I hated that scene where they started fighting, and it's like, how are they fighting? Like I told someone, I said the scene where they're fighting on the piece of the Star Destroyer, not the Star Destroyer, the Death Star on that moon of Endor or whatever. When they're fighting, when that scene in the trailer, which everyone's seen, where Finn's running across the top and he's screaming at Rey, I thought that they were going to pull back and we were going to realize that Kylo wasn't really there and Rey was fighting this vision of him. And it's like she's just out there risking her life for no good reason whatsoever, right? And Finn's trying to pull her back, like, he's not even here. Stop, you know what I mean? Like, I thought that's what was going to happen. So the idea that in the film, he's really there, which of course he was, but it just, I don't know. It just got so confusing. This whole, like, are you there? Are you not there? You're on the ship. I'm going to yank we're going to actually knock this thing from where you are to where I am. And then I'll know where you are. I hated that. It took an idea from Last Jedi that on the surface of it, I thought I was kind of okay with. And then by the end of this film, I realized I don't like that at all.
No, I thought that was ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. It's just stupid as far as I'm concerned. What they've done to the Force, I don't know if you can ever fix that now. What they've done to the Force in these movies. I mean, they have made the Force just complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. That scene where I'm surprised you didn't say this was one of your biggest disappointments. My biggest disappointment actually was the Knights of Ren. That was one of the few things I was still looking forward to, was the Knights of Ren.
Were they in this movie?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I didn't mention them. It's like they're not even in this movie. And by the time we actually see them fight, they're fighting supposedly their master. Like, it's what is this? They didn't even have a brief conversation about, why have you turned from us, brother? Come back.
This is some of the worst writing I've ever seen. It's just terrible. It's terrible. But I wanted to get back to your point. The fight with Kylo Ren, when he is confronted by the Knights of Ren, he does that thing where he pulls the lightsaber, out of thin air, because Rey has Force transported it to him. That literally reminded me of like the cheesiest, most kiddie cartoon. It looked like a cartoon to me. Like you just pull things out of nothing. You know what I mean? Like they do in cartoons where they like pull the hammer and hit the other character, and they get the hammer from nowhere. It just pops into their hand.
Right.
That's what it looked like to me. That's what it reminded me of. I thought it was ridiculous. And this is supposed to be like a tense scene. At first he's the Knights of Ren are kind of getting the better. He's getting beat by the Knights of Ren because he doesn't have a lightsaber, which of course is also stupid. Why do you throw his lightsaber away? But that, you can make the same argument with Luke in Return of the Jedi. Why the hell did he throw his lightsaber away? But I just didn't understand that whole Force teleportation thing is that's just dumb. I think it's just dumb. And what it does is it makes all these new Force abilities, what they do is they basically take the stakes away. And we haven't even talked about the big one that people are talking about, which apparently A lot of people are saying this is the reason that the Mandalorian came on before the movie came out, was because in the Mandalorian we saw Baby Yoda heal Carl Weathers' character, and a
Right.
lot of people are saying the reason they did that was because people love Baby Yoda, and so when Baby Yoda did that, people were cool with it. I'm one of them. I thought that was cool. I was like, that's cool. The problem is there were a lot of hardcore fans that were saying, wait a second, force healing is not a thing. If they had force healing, what about this situation? What about that situation? And now there's like stuff like exponentially where people are coming up with all these different situations, being like, why didn't they force heal this guy? Why didn't they force heal in this situation? Why did they force heal, in this context?
Right.
They made it so ridiculous. And not only did we get the force healing, because Rey introduces the power, early in the movie where she like heals that slug creature.
Right.
And later on, Kylo Ren brings her back from the dead. I mean, this is ridiculous. Where are the stakes now? So apparently, if you don't instantly turn into a Force ghost, because I was seeing that when I saw Kylo Ren bring Rey back, when I saw that scene, I was like, okay, so why doesn't she just bring him back if he's going to die,
Right.
Well, they figured that out and said, oh, he's going to just turn into a Force ghost like Obi-Wan. He's just going to, disappear. So she can't revive him. That was like the one thing I think they thought of and said, okay, he's just going to disappear. Right. But I was like, it takes the stakes away. So now Rey apparently sacrificed herself, right? If we had, stayed with it. And that to me, that's an ending. That's a real ending. The hero died. That's bold. She saved them. That's something. No, but Kylo Ren's gonna come out of this ditch. Palpatine did it too. So why can't he come out of this ditch that he was thrown into? So he comes out of the ditch and he brings her back to life. I mean, that's just it does terrible things to the Force, in my opinion, because it's like there are no stakes. It's just like you basically have the powers of a god.
Yeah,
that's never what the Force was supposed to be.
Yeah, I just the Force healing thing, they just overused the hell out of it. I mean, if they had put more limits on it, it could have kind of worked, But the way they use it in this, it seems like well, why did anybody have to die? Like, I mean, like you brought up, it doesn't work in the way that they used it.
We lost the feed for a second.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say the way in which they use it in the film, I feel like it doesn't work because it does open that can of worms of like, well, there's all kinds of people they should have healed. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. This film's got a lot of problems.
I will concede to you.
And see this healing thing, in The Mandalorian, I'm okay with it because we've always been told that Yoda's species is more in tune with the Force than other people because genetically of the species that he is or whatever, right? I mean, his species could be, quote unquote, the chosen people of the Force, right? We don't know. And maybe that's why they're so in tune. So when Baby Yoda did it, and honestly, even when Rey did it the first time, I kind of took it as, she's so powerful in the Force to begin with. Well, maybe she does have that ability. And then I thought that's what Palpatine was trying to take from her. But then when Kylo turned around and used it, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Anybody can do this? Because when Kylo
brought her back from the dead. He didn't just heal her; she was dead.
It's like, well, then anybody can do it, right? Like, and then it turns into, like you said, it's like, well, why did anybody have to die in any of the Star Wars movies? There's a Jedi standing around, that doesn't. It doesn't. I don't know. At the end of the day, it's fiction. I get it, but this stuff. Some of this new Force stuff, I agree with you. It's too much. It's way too much. And but for me, the thing that drove me the most nuts was the weird force transporting thing. I couldn't take that. When he yanked the necklace off of her, I'm like going, wait a minute, how did he just do that? You know, they've never been able to do that before. Like I thought, I thought he was gonna see the necklace on her and say, you're at planet such and such because I've taken part in that festival when I was training at the Jedi Academy, But then when he yanked it off of her and someone like, CSI scanned it and told him where they were, I was just like, okay, all right, whatever. I did not like, because it literally, it took something that bothered me in The Last Jedi and like turned it to like if you have a dial that goes from 1 to 10, it's like turning it to 30. Because especially when they started fighting with the lightsabers, I'm like, what? Wait a minute. This is getting really confusing. He isn't there, but he could kill her. Like, it just gets into this weird thing. It's like, well, why didn't Vader just kill Luke when he was on the Millennium Falcon flying away in the first movie? Why didn't he just force project himself, transport his essence into that scene, take out the lightsaber, and just kill Luke where he's set? Or Leia, for that matter, or anybody. Like, if that ability exists in the Star Wars universe, then it negates almost everything that's happened in all the films. Because there's no reason for a physical face-to-face conflict anymore when you can kill someone, via telepathy. It just doesn't. I don't get it.
No, I don't get it either. I think it's ridiculous. It makes the Force into it just makes it silly. Just makes it silly. Before Force powers were treated with like, this sort of like, they were like something that happened, very sparingly. You know what I mean? And It was like a big deal when somebody used their Force powers, And now it's just like, they're basically gods. They're basically gods.
Well, and it takes, like, for example, one of the things I've missed in these films is I would have liked more Jedi and more Sith, because I want to see more lightsaber battles, right? Where you've got, just something more attuned to what we actually saw in the prequels, like a return to that. Because if the Jedi have reemerged, as quote unquote the title Return of the Jedi tells us, there should be enough of them running around by the time that we get to, because I kept thinking that by Last Jedi or whatever, there'd be more lightsaber users and more Force sensitive people running around by that time. The Jedi would have reemerged in several different instances, in different ways. They just weren't being trained the same way that Luke was training people. But the fact that it's still this isolated thing, and then you see this level of power that people are using, it's like, then it gets even weirder. It's like, why aren't there more people following the tenets of the Jedi and the Sith? Why aren't there more people seeking this power if it enables you to do this kind of stuff? Like, we should have, quasi-Sith users all over the place if they, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Well, why don't the Knights of Ren have any Force powers?
Exactly.
What the hell is that? I mean, that's not even consistent with their own continuity. They're basically giving the Force to whoever, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, so how come the Knights of Ren don't have lightsabers and they can't use the Force?
And how are the Knights of Ren able to defeat Kylo if he can bring someone back to the dead through the Force, and all they have are like axes and maces and stuff?
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
How does that even make sense?
It doesn't make any sense. That's my point. It's like
that. Yeah.
And the Knights of Ren was the one thing I was hoping was going to be cool in this. That was the one expectation I had, was that, they're finally going to do something with the Knights of Ren. They're finally going to do something with them. We're going to see them. We're going to at least get some inkling of their power. And no, apparently they are just a bunch of fanboys that like to dress up and they carry ancient weapons. What?
And they have a horrible emissions problem with their starship.
Yeah. Did you notice that?
They're going to cause climate change in the galaxy with all those emissions.
What was that, by the way? What was that supposed to be? Like the ship's damaged or something? From what? I mean, I didn't understand that.
every time I saw that ship start moving forward with all that emissions and smoke and stuff coming off them, I kept expecting Captain Planet to show up out of nowhere and beat the hell out of them or something. So, anyhow, those are the things that bothered me the most. With an honorable mention for that scene where Palpatine threw up the lightning and took out all the ships. Because I'm like, well, if Palpatine can do that now, why couldn't he have done a version of that in Return of the Jedi? Why didn't he just, when the battle looked like it might even kind of go sideways, why didn't Palpatine go, oh no, this is not going to happen? Like, zap all the damn ships and knock out all their electrical systems. You know, EMP force ability, which I think probably comes from some video game somewhere. But anyhow, I just, there was just all this stuff that I just, there was just a lot of this movie. There was part of it I was confused. I was like, is Kylo in? Is he there or is he not there? What is going on? It's a couple of scenes where literally the scene where they were fighting on the in his quarters, which look ironically a lot like the Imperial Blockade Runner, which that didn't make any sense. Why would his quarters look like the Imperial Blockade Runner? Anyhow, so I mean, I like the interiors of the Imperial Blockade Runner, but I don't know why Kylo Ren, a devotee of the Sith, would basically live in a replica of the Imperial Blockade Runner. It makes no sense. Yeah. Especially when he didn't even establish that he grew up running around the hallways of the Imperial Blockade Runner. It makes no sense. When they were fighting, I was confused because I was like, is he there? And then I realized, oh, he's not there. And I was like, what are they doing? Like, it got really confusing to me, this weird force transportation thing. It just, you know, and I just, it's a mess. It's just a real mess. But like I said, there were things I liked. There were ideas I really thought was interesting. And there were a few scenes that I kind of enjoyed. And they weren't always action scenes. I like the snowtrooper guys like going like from door to door. You know what I mean? There were some designs in the film I really liked. While I hate the way that they become airborne, I really like the design of the jetpack stormtrooper guys. Like the look of their helmet and everything. Like I thought that design was really cool. And I like the snowtrooper looking guys. There's some visually, there was some things I thought, oh, that's really kind of cool looking. And even though I might like to have it as a toy and sit it on my desk, the stuff they did with it was not very good. But I did like that scene on that world because that world looked completely different. And it looked almost kind of medieval, like a place we'd never kind of been before, and them going door to door. There was a lot of things I'm like going, you know, this as a scene in a different movie would be interesting. Because it reminded me of, you would see like in the World War II movies, where the Nazis are going door to door looking for the spies, or the traitors, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know. And I've been watching a lot of World War II stuff, like World War II in color. I've been watching Age of Tanks and stuff on Netflix. And I've been really thinking it's a shame that they didn't go back to a lot of this kind of material where Lucas took a lot of his original inspiration. It took inspiration from that instead of necessarily taking sort of like the wrong inspiration from existing Star Wars stuff. Because here's the thing. By the end of this movie, I felt like if you're going to do the whole Kylo and Rey thing, that they're connected to the Force, and you want to do this whole familial thing, why don't you guys just do the story of the twins, Han and Leia's twins? Why did we have to do this? Yeah. Like, couldn't you just adapt those novels if that's the story you wanted? If you want to tell a story about family.
But that's not the story they wanted to do. That's the point. First of all, I don't know how much of the story they actually even knew they wanted to do. I don't think they had a total plan. I think that there was no plan. There was no plan. But there were probably ideas. There were probably some ideas of where the story could go. So, that's the thing. Nothing is built upon from the previous films. It's just like each film is kind of like its own thing that has the characters in it, and there's just no consistency.
Yeah,
It is the most poorly written saga I think ever. You know what I mean? Like, it is so badly written, and it's because there was no plan. There was no George Lucas, who at least was the final word, and could be like, well, this is direction I want to go in. I don't want to do this. I do want to do this. You know, there was no one doing that. I mean, we know Kathleen Kennedy is an idiot. I mean, she's an idiot. She has no idea what she's doing. This is the lady that said, well, we've got no source material. Remember, we don't have anything to base any of this stuff on.
And yet, at the end of this film, I really felt like the story they wanted to do was the story of the twins that comes from the novels. That's the thing that drove me the most nuts, is I could hear that in my head, and as the credits were rolling at the end of this movie, I kept thinking, it's like, why didn't you guys just adapt that story? Like, take this idea of these like Sith Imperial zealots that are still running around, that want their power back, that want it so bad that they'll stick Palpatine on a stick. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like that idea mixed with those original, novels, I think there's something really interesting there. Like, there's a compelling 3 films there, but as it is, this thing is just, I don't know. Like I said, if you're curious about the film, if you've been along for the ride so far, go see it. But if you were left cold by Last Jedi, if the trailers haven't done anything for you, if you've been conflicted about it, if you already have a Disney Plus membership, just wait. So those are kind of those are my total whole impressions of the film. To talk about it anymore would just be to just, it's exhausting. It really is. I just like with Last Jedi, in my mind, I imagined what was going to happen, right? Because I like the idea of Palpatine on a stick, basically controlled by the people that once put him in power, so desperate that they're going to reanimate him against his will, looking for someone to transfer his essence into because his existence sucks, right?
Yeah.
Like that idea, that's interesting. Palpatine desperate for a way out, whether it means death or living anew through a new body. That's an interesting idea. Like,
yeah, that is an interesting idea.
It's a very cool concept, I think, for me personally. I like that idea a lot. I just wish they'd spent more time actually intelligently leading to that. It would have made more sense. And then by the time you see what they've done to him, you're just like, oh, you might have even felt for the Emperor for half a second. It's like, wow, these people are so desperate to stay in power. Look what they've done to this guy. Did he have it coming? Maybe he had it coming, but this is hard to watch. Like, it's just, there's something interesting there. You could almost, in a weird way, for, I don't know, half a second, empathize, with Palpatine and where he's at,
Imagine that. Imagine actually having some depth in the story, and he's not just a caricature. But that's not what they did.
I know.
Listen. We can talk. We can talk about what they should have done, or what could have been. We could have a whole show about that, right? Talking about that. There's so many wasted opportunities here. It boggles the mind. It really does. It boggles the mind. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that they didn't know what they were doing. Kathleen Kennedy's a moron. She was the one supposed to be steering the ship, but I think she's a figurehead. I don't think she actually is doing anything. I think she's just a figurehead. So there's nobody running the ship. Bob Iger, he comes down and says things every once in a while because Star Wars is very important to him, but he's got the whole company to run. So, and I don't know how creative Bob Iger really is. I don't know what his kind of ideas were. I know that he threw away George Lucas's ideas because he said that in his book.
Yeah,
I know that. So yeah, there's so many what ifs, and they could have done this, and wouldn't this been that's such a great idea, but that's not what's in the movie. You know what I mean? That's not what they did. And one of the biggest problems I have is, like, even the things that I think were good, the problem is within their own continuity, within what they showed us before, it doesn't fit. like the Leia thing is a great example of this, because I know you were really looking forward to this. I know this is something you really like the idea of. It is a good idea, okay, of Luke training Leia. Okay, they did that in the novels, in the expanded universe. It's a good idea for her to be training Rey, except I don't understand why she needs any training. I said that in The Force Awakens. In The Force Awakens, I said she already beat Kylo Ren. Why does she need Luke? You know, I always joke that what was going to happen was in the next movie, you know, after we see Rey comes over with the lightsaber, you know, with Luke, and that's how the movie ends. And then, of course, the first scene is, you know, she gives him the lightsaber and he throws it away. And it's just like, what the hell was that? And then I knew we were in trouble. I knew we were in trouble right away. Yeah. Right away, I knew we were in trouble with that movie. But I joked the way that The Last Jedi was going to open up was that Rey was going to hand Luke the lightsaber, say, hey, this is yours. And then she was going to get back in the Falcon and go destroy the First Order. Why not? What training does she need? Why does she need training? She doesn't. She doesn't. That's the point. They decided what they're trying to do is they're trying to fix things that they broke in the other two movies, and they try to fix them in this movie. And it doesn't make any sense. The idea of Luke training Leia doesn't make any sense because in the first movie, they were all trying to find Luke because Luke was like the only Force user left, basically, that wasn't evil. That's in the opening crawl. That's why Snoke is obsessed with finding him. That's why the Resistance is obsessed with finding him, because he's it. There isn't anybody else. That's why it's called The Force Awakens. Because apparently the Force is kind of dormant except for these dark side users. And so the whole premise is that Luke is the only other one. So they've got to find Luke. Luke is it. Well, wait a second. Now we find out that Luke trained Leia. So why do you need Luke?
Right.
Why do you need Luke if Leia's right there? You don't need him. You never needed him. That's the point. Nothing was built upon anything. It just comes out of nowhere. There's no context. Even judging it by its own standards, judging it by the things it established just in this trilogy, it doesn't fit. It doesn't work because the narrative is broken. The story is completely broken. It's just, you can't fix it. They tried so hard to fix this thing, and you can't fix it. I mean, they're going back to things that JJ established himself and contradicting them. It's just like these guys can't even follow their own continuity. They can't even follow their own continuity. And that's the problem. So it's like even things that are good, because I agree with you, the whole idea of Leia being trained by Luke is awesome. They had that in the expanded universe. It's in the Zahn trilogy, which I think they should have just made the Zahn trilogy into a movie.
Yeah.
The Thrawn trilogy that Timothy Zahn did, the Thrawn trilogy. That's what they should have done. That's a great story.
Yeah.
This stuff is trash. And the fact, and you have to blame Kathleen Kennedy for, she is the one that has to be blamed. I think she is a figurehead, but she says she's in charge. If she's in charge, she's the one to blame because she's the only consistency in this mess. You know, she's the only consistent one. JJ, you know, I can defend a little bit because the fact of the matter is, I know Rian Johnson messed up whatever ideas he was trying to set up in that first movie. Whatever ideas they were destroyed in The Last Jedi, and he had to come back and try to figure out a new ending. I don't believe for a second that he actually intended to bring Palpatine back from the start. Why have Snoke if you're going to bring back Palpatine? There's no reason to do that. You have Snoke. Snoke took over that role. Don't need him. Right. Don't need him. You had a new villain. That was like one thing that I was into. People were speculating, who's Snoke? Where did he come from? What's his deal? Was he some sort of apprentice we never knew about? You know, people were all into that. And what did Rian Johnson say? Who cares? Kill him. Literally, that's what he said. He said that's not important to the story. Kill him off. What story? What story? I mean, it's so confusing to me because it doesn't make any sense. Nothing fits. It's like a disjointed puzzle where they took pieces that don't fit and they just jammed them in. You know, they just jammed them in anyway.
Right.
I mean, it's just a mess. It's a mess.
Yeah. So I take it you're on the side of don't see this movie.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, from my perspective, I would say wait until it comes on Disney Plus, like you said. I don't think
Right.
there's any reason to go to the theater and see this movie. I really don't. I don't, I don't even think the spectacle aspect is worth it to me. I think it's too much. It just didn't appeal to me. So, yeah, I would say, I mean, here's the thing. I'm a hardcore Star Wars fan. Even though I hate these movies, I'm a hardcore Star Wars fan. I haven't stopped being a fan just because of what Disney has done. I'm still a fan. And from that perspective, I wanted to see what they were going to do. And I think most fans want to see what they're going to do, whether they like it, whether they hate it, whether they're sort of about it. They want to see the conclusion, right? So from that perspective, I can see if you're a hardcore fan, yeah, you want to see the end, no matter how bad it is. You just want to see it. You want to see what happens. But if you're like a casual fan, or really not a big Star Wars fan, there's no reason to see this movie. I mean, there's zero reason to see this movie, in my opinion. Now, I will say this, okay? I can't really come up with anything that I really liked in this movie, okay?
Okay.
I joked with my kids that I like. Do you remember the pilot that they kind of kept showing? I think he was in The Force Awakens too. There was this pilot. He was like a real idiot. He was kind of there in the resistance camp. Do you know what I'm even talking about?
No.
That's how forgettable he is. But anyway, he irks me. He irked me in the first movie because we've talked about this this idea that one thing that really irked me in The Force Awakens was the way the pilots talk to each other.
Right.
And you and I have talked about how George Lucas based the pilots in the first Star Wars movie on World War II pilots and the way they talk and how they act and all that stuff. It's really cool. And every time I see that scene at the Battle of Yavin, I always feel that. I'm like, yeah, these guys sound like pilots. They're acting like pilots, Now, The Force Awakens, when we do the Starkiller run, there was something that was really off to me. And I realized my brother, I think, was the one who came up with this. He's the one who articulated it. I was like, there's something really off. And he said, well, the thing is, JJ is basing his pilots on Star Wars, not on real pilots. Okay?
Right.
Because he's a hack. He doesn't know any better. He's just basing his pilots on Star Wars instead of the actual real stuff. And so they're not convincing. They're not convincing. So anyway, this character was in The Force Awakens, and he was one of the worst. And just totally unconvincing. And then he's bumbling in this movie and being an idiot. I remember he's just like a bumbling idiot. Anyway, he's in the final battle, and he died. And I was like, that's awesome. That's really cool. That was my favorite part. They killed that guy. I was like, that's cool. At least he killed that annoying guy. That's another thing is like there's no like they didn't do anything. There was no daring. Like they didn't kill off Chewbacca. Remember we did our death pool and I think we actually didn't get anything right because we said Leia was going to live and she died.
Right.
We literally didn't get anything right. They didn't kill anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
It would have been a lot more daring to kill Chewie. That Rey killed Chewie. But no, they took that away. We thought that they were going to kill C-3PO, wiping his memory. Nope. Turns out that R2-D2 had a backup. They wouldn't even do that. So it's like they were very, like, they didn't take any real chances in this movie. The only character they killed was Kylo Ren, right? It's the only major character that died.
And the Emperor. I think the Emperor is officially dead now.
No, we can bring him back. I mean, now we know the way the Force works. We can bring him back anytime we want. Nobody's really dead anymore. The fact that he survived the Death Star in the first place, we can bring him back anytime we want. I mean, they've just made it ridiculous. So we can bring him back. But the only one that really died was of the main characters was Kylo Ren, and I think that's if you can call Hux a major character, they killed him off. Which that was cool. I was cool with killing him off because I thought he was a bumbling idiot, you know.
Yep.
he was a fool. And the General Pride character, even though I think the name is silly, I like that idea, like you said, of that sort of imperial zealot, this guy that's like, he's at his core an imperial. He doesn't really even care about the First Order. He's still
Yeah.
like empire. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I like that. So General Pride was okay. But here's the thing. I did ask my girls what they liked. Okay. So
Okay.
so that I'm not totally negative. I asked them what they like. My kids range in age basically from 8 to 13. This is the things that they liked. Okay. They liked the little Pixar robot,
Okay.
the
Okay.
little Pixar guy.
Yeah.
That's what I call him to them. I think it's actually Do is what officially that thing is called.
Oh. Oh, the little
Pixar robot, the
yeah,
the Pixar logo guy.
yeah, the
Um,
lampshade robot.
so, which by the way, I thought he was worthless, but my kids liked him. They thought he was cute, and they
Yeah.
liked it. So, there was that. They liked the because I asked them because they all said they liked it. I was like, well, what did you like? So this is what they told me.
Okay.
They liked the Pixar robot. I told you apparently one of my kids is a Raylo, so one of my kids did like the kiss, which I almost threw up. I thought that was so cringy. But one of my kids liked the kiss, the fact that Ray and Kylo Ren kissed. Another one of my kids liked because one of my their favorite character is Ray. They liked that Kylo Ren saved Ray. They liked that.
Okay.
And the other thing, and this is kind of funny because I hated this, but one of my kids really liked this. One of my kids really liked when Luke caught the lightsaber, when Ray threw the lightsaber away and he caught it.
Right. Yeah.
One of my kids really liked that.
Okay. Well, that scene in particular was a total, JJ getting back at Ryan. I know they keep telling us he was not doing that, but that scene right there really felt like that. Because Ray's throwing it away and Luke catches it, and the first thing he basically tells her is he was wrong.
No, JJ was trying to fix the damage. No, it's very clear, and other people have talked about this. JJ was clearly trying to fix The Last Jedi. I think he hates that film as much as anybody else. He has said things because you have to kind of look behind what they actually say. Because I've seen him say things where he was pretty pissed, you know what I mean, about that whole situation, and he was like, what did this guy do, And it's very clear. It's very clear if you watch The Rise of Skywalker that J.J. Abrams was not a fan of The Last Jedi. In fact, what's really funny about the criticism of this film is that basically all the Last Jedi people that love The Last Jedi hate this film. They hate it. So it's actually united fandom menace with people that like The Last Jedi. Now, they don't like it for completely different reasons, right? They have completely different reasons for not liking it. But it's funny because they both don't like it. So Fandom Menace doesn't like it, but then also the people that loved The Last Jedi and defended The Last Jedi, they hate this film. They hate it. So it's my point is it's very obvious that JJ was trying to address those issues, and a lot of people have given him credit for that, and I will give him credit for that too, because The Last Jedi was such a mess. Obviously there was no fixing it. I don't think there was any way to fix it. He tried, like I said, one of my kids really liked that Luke caught the lightsaber. Now, the issue I have with that is that Force Ghost shouldn't be able to do that. He's a ghost.
Right.
But then he also lifted his starfighter out. It's like, well, in the previous film, Yoda destroyed the Jedi Temple. So it's like, okay, why don't the ghosts come and do something then?
Yeah. Why didn't? Because that was the thing. When we saw everything the ghosts were doing, I didn't understand why the ghosts were not present when Rey was fighting the Emperor and they were encouraging her. I thought they were going to kind of step out of the ether and be all standing there blue and glowing. And I thought we were going to see all of them behind her. Literally, at least visually, they're ghosts behind her.
Why didn't they actually
almost. Yeah, almost like Lord of the Rings. Remember when Aragorn found all the people that were trapped because of the sins they had committed? And he's like, help me, do this, and I will set you free. I'll release the curse, the thing that bonds you to, to, what I mean, to serve,
Yeah.
or betray. You know what I mean? Like he's like, if you do this, I'll let you go. And it's like an army of ghosts. Like, I mean, I thought at the very least, because I knew because I'd seen some spoiler stuff, I knew that scene was going to be in the film, but I thought at least we were going to see their Force ghosts. I was like, well, we'll get to see a Force ghost Sam Jackson. We'll get to see a Force ghost Ewan again. It'd be kind of fun to see all those characters in the finale. And it's just
voiceover. There's another huge problem here, okay, which is that it was established in the prequels that Qui-Gon was the first Jedi to figure out how to be a Force ghost.
Right.
Okay. And that the reason Obi-Wan was able to do it and the reason Yoda was able to do it was because they learned from him. Now everybody does it. Leia does it. Kylo Ren did it. Who taught Kylo Ren how to do that? I mean, it's just silly. And again, it comes back to the whole thing. It's like they just made it all silly.
Yeah.
Anything that was established before, they just like, because talking about the Force ghost, a lot of people are like, how does Mace Windu know how to be a Force ghost?
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense. It's just such a mess. From a narrative point of view, it's such a mess. But I will say, clearly they were trying to address a lot of the damage that The Last Jedi did, and I just don't think it was possible. You just couldn't fix it. You couldn't put the genie back in the bottle. It was out,
Right.
And I just don't think there was any fixing it. But I will give JJ some credit because I think he at least tried.
Yeah.
He at least tried, and then from a casual perspective of someone who's not really looking that deep and doesn't really care about story, some of these things I think succeeded. I've seen people who like this movie. I mean, posts from people who really like the movie because they have a very superficial understanding of it, and it's just like, oh well, that's cool. It's like my kids. Oh yeah, I like the Pixar thing. That's cute. So
all right.
There's that perspective. There's that perspective.
No, I get it. Because I do notice there's some people who like the film. And like I said, I don't hate the film, but I'm not a huge fan of the film either. Because like I said, I'm happy with some of the things they did, and I think they had some really powerful and interesting ideas that I feel like were kind of wasted in the way in which they employed them in the film itself. So do we feel like that's good for our review here, our spoiler review and everything for Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah, I mean, I could pick this thing apart all day. I actually got this list of like 21 things that are wrong with this film. And I'm just going to mention that I decided not to incorporate it, but it's like my whole point after giving you that list was going to be like, yeah, this just barely scratches the surface of all the things that are wrong in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.